come and gone away from Paris or Rome, but I wanna go home. Maybe surrounded by a million people, I still feel all alone. Just wanna go home. Oh, I miss you, you know. And I've been keeping all the letters that I wrote to you, each one a line or two. I'm fine, baby, how are you? Well, I would send them, but I know that it's just not enough. My words were cold and flat, and you deserve more than that. Another airplane, another sunny place. I'm lucky, I know, but I wanna go home. I got to go home. Let me go home. I'm just too far from where you are. I wanna come home. And I feel just like I'm living someone else's life. It's like I just stepped outside when everything was going right. And I know just why you could not come along with me. This was not your dream, but you always believed in me. Another winter day has come and gone away in either Paris or Rome, and I wanna go home. Let me go home. And I'm surrounded by a million people. I still feel alone, and let me go home. Oh, I miss you, you know. Let me go home. My run, baby, I'm done. I gotta go home. Let me go home. It'll all be alright. I'll be home tonight. I'm coming back home.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Welcome to a very special episode of the Fourth Branch. Today we continue the conversation about human trafficking. As promised yesterday, we will also touch on another important and related topic, which is children's behind bars. We will also continue on the conversation about the road to 2020, when many Democrats, 13 so far, are fighting to get the nomination for the Democrat Party in order to unseat Donald Trump from the presidency. That and much more when we return. Please stay with us. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. This picture of a young girl that you just saw on the screen, which is currently behind me, usually accompanies the effort by many groups, many organizations, including the government, to bring attention to a very serious problem: human trafficking. Yesterday we talked at length about this very problem. According to the FBI database, there are approximately 750,000 children missing per year here in the United States of America. This is equivalent to 2,000 children per day. Approximately 40. One child is gone missing every 40 seconds. This is not a small issue, because most of the time those children do not run away from home. They are kidnapped, abducted by other individuals who would be using them as prostitutes and to sell. And those children, more often than not, would never see home again. Some will end up dead. That's the reason when you hear in the news a child who has disappeared for a while and found, there is a lot of jubilation, because it doesn't happen often. And we have been asking the question, and we answered yesterday as to why any individual or group would get involved in abducting children. The short answer is money. Yes, this is a story of what we like to call capitalist society. Now, if you meet anyone on the street, the person doesn't look like a criminal. He or she doesn't look like a monster. Ironically, a lot of those people who are involved in those type of inhuman, disgusting activities are people you may know, people you met on the street, people you may even be friend with too. But there is no way you can know that, can you? You may recall that there was that gentleman in Colorado who had abducted, I don't recall the name of the girl anymore, but she was abducted and spent a decade in the basement of that gentleman. Castro, I believe, was the name of that guy. And she even had a child by him. He was someone in the neighborhood, someone people know, comes and goes, probably says hello to people. Nobody would ever suspect Castro was an abductor and has had, rather, subjected an individual, a young girl, who went to school and never went back home. The end of her story was not as bad as many, because as long as it took, as emotional as it was, she got to get home and she was still alive.
Each one in line or two. I'm fine, baby, how are you?
There is one thing we know about people who abduct young girls, who abduct children. They have a market for it. And that's what we looked at yesterday. As a society, if we want to step out, human trafficking, child abduction, it is not a difficult task.
I'm just too far from.
Well, at least it is, one aspect of it is not difficult. You see, in order for a business to stay in existence, in order for a product to have any value, you have to have clients. And those who abduct young girls on the street, reprogram them to become prostitutes, have a market for those young girls.
And I know just why you could not come along with me. This was not your dream, but you're all.
Unfortunately, those who actually solicit those type of service, prostitution, but they have very specific demand, very specific requirement. They could be very old individual, but they want someone who is a certain age, and usually it's a minor. And those in the business would oblige, because that's how they make their money. So the problem is twofold. Our government have been putting a lot of resources out there in order to track down the abductors. It is a very difficult task because, well, those people, they are very good at hiding, and they also do a lot of surveillance before they abduct a child. So they have a way of escaping any sort of surveillance, any sort of government effort. But there is one aspect of the problem we mentioned yesterday we can at least try to address, which is the client. The client is the individual who solicits the service. And while it is most of the time some sort of hidden agenda or hidden information of those people, but every now and then our government gets lucky and we end up finding those individuals, at least one or a couple of them. But what had remained a big problem for our society is the fact that those individuals who are involved in those type of activities, the clients, they are individuals with means. They are rich, wealthy individuals. And here in our society, we treat wealthy individuals really very differently in our justice system. No matter how disgusting what they do, no matter how disgusting their actions are, we treat them differently. They get a pass. They have, well, great legal representation. And as such, our justice system simply gives them a pass. And that's where the big problem of child abduction lies. Because we don't have any individuals soliciting prostitution. Usually those type of solicitation, those people pay a lot of money. In other words, we always will have to deal with people who have means. So if we're not punishing those people, then what kind of progress can we possibly make about human trafficking?
When everything was going right,
chances are absolutely none.
come along with me.
Yesterday I give you the example. If I have this pen and I'm selling it and nobody is buying it, then I would have to get out of the pen business. Because no matter how much money I throw at that business, it will not work. The same principle applies for people who abduct children to turn them into prostitutes. They have a market for them, usually the client. And because our justice system seems to turn a blind eye, then those people who abduct those children, every now and then they suffer a setback, but no big deal. They will continue because they still have clients who realize that even if they get caught, the punishment is nothing if there is a punishment at all. So our society has to make the decision. Do we want to solve the problem of human trafficking or do we not? And if the answer is yes, then those individuals, no matter how rich they are, should suffer the same consequences that people without means would in case of human trafficking. We will show you shortly the picture of a very famous individual before we move on to the second part of this conversation, which is children behind bars. We will show you a picture of a very famous individual who was caught on this very problem, caught in an act. They have the video, at least the investigators have the video and say that they will be putting the video out. So far that hasn't happened, and I'm sure that what that means is that his legal representation, who happen to have a lot of money, probably trying to make it impossible for that to happen. Thus, the problem solving any type of issue in the United States of America. Because if it's done by the regular people, then the justice system will throw the book at that individual. But if it is a rich individual, no matter how egregious the act is, no matter how disgusting the act is, the justice system gives a pass. In other words, the idea of solving child abduction, human trafficking, is almost an impossibility, because the clients are wealthy individuals and they have ways around the justice system. Any hope?
Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. is the fourth branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment.
Yesterday we talked about a very wealthy individual by the name of Robert Kraft. Now, Robert Kraft was caught soliciting sex, and we already debated that, and I would strongly encourage you to take a look at People Branch YouTube channel. On the People Branch YouTube channel, that's where we have all the previous discussions on this program. Follow the step on the screen to get to the People Branch YouTube channel. While you're there, you can just browse the videos, or if you rather go directly to a particular topic, you can search for that topic. And I would encourage you, while you're on the People Branch YouTube channel, to subscribe to the channel, which will provide us the opportunity to send you invites, to send you updates, and also to keep you abreast of the activities that we have on the front. Now, back to Robert Kraft. Now, Robert Kraft was caught soliciting sex, but as we explained, this is not our problem, that someone who has money decide to pay for prostitution. Now, we've been using Robert Kraft as our example, but as I mentioned before, that it is not just Robert Kraft. We have John Havens. He was the former president of and CEO of Citigroup. We also have John Childs, who was the founder of private equity firm J.W. Childs and Associates. And as you might imagine, there are many other very wealthy individuals involved in this type of activities. And every time it happens, we end up having they end up walking away with no punishment whatsoever. In other words, we cannot really resolve the problem of human trafficking because, well, the clients are wealthy individuals, and as long as there are clients, as long as there are demands, then those who abduct our children will continue to do so. So if we as a people want to put an end to human trafficking, then we have a job to do. Our job is to make certain that our justice system, we raise our voice and we make certain that our justice system punish those people, no matter how wealthy they are, no matter how connected they are. If they are involved in those type of activities, then we should not give them a pass. Because if we do, then we should consider stopping the idea or the pretense of we want to put an end to human trafficking. Because as I mentioned, the equation is very simple. We cannot get to those who are doing the abduction, but the reason they continue to do the abduction is because they have clientele, and this clientele they have to please. Now, if we cannot get to those abductors, then why not get to the clients and make sure that there is no more source of money for those individuals, and if they don't have any place for them to provide what they consider the product, which is the young children that they kidnap, they reprogram for the pleasure of those individuals, then if there is no more money coming, then they will stop doing that job. So do we want to put an end to human trafficking or do we not? That's the question.
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. In 2019 alone, during the Trump administration, the private prison industry have grown by leaps and bounds. There are currently 3 major corporations. One is CoreCivic, the other one is called Geo. Wonder why such cryptic name for a organization which manage the prison system. But nevertheless, the private prison industry has been making pretty good money. Now, this particular industry came to existence, as I mentioned yesterday, in 1852. Now, our society has this habit, sometimes that makes it I would say impossible when there is a serious problem to resolve. And the reason I said that is because the type of discrimination that we are engaged in our society is fed most of the time by misinformation, by disinformation. Sometimes it's propaganda, sometimes it's perception, and sometimes there is a history behind it. Now, in order to address this issue at hand, which is the children behind bar, we're going to make a quantum leap in terms of the trying to give you all the details behind this topic, which is private prison. We will bring it back because you may recall, if you've been watching this program, that
we have been discussing the evolution, if you like, the roadmap from slavery to modern time, and private prison happened to be a path that we will take in order to explain the interaction between blacks and whites. But we ought to bring it to the discussion today because it is relevant. As I started saying, society has this habit of ignoring a problem unless it impacts us directly. So we can go and take many different examples, whether it's disease, illnesses, whether it's a tragedy. Yes, we can sympathize with people. We can may even feel bad in terms of what certain groups, certain people in certain region are going through. But a few minutes later, we forget about all that and we go about our lives. So is the case for human trafficking, and the reason our society is not up in arms and we are not all involved in helping putting an end to that is because only those who are impacted are struggling with the problem. The rest of us, we simply, hey, that's not our problem. And that is as the world grows, as the population of the world continue to increase, you will find that the problem also continue to expand. And unless we, mankind, we change our ways and try to understand that the neighbor next door, the community we live in, the state, that's all interrelated, and we ought to start making decisions that's beneficial for the majority instead of making decision that's simply good for just me. Now, having said that, the private industry has been it's a business that's been booming. It's one of those businesses that seems to do well no matter what time, what period we're going through. When you hear recession going on, it doesn't matter because the private prison industry seems to be doing just fine. Now, there are many aspects to it, but let me touch on the aspect of children behind bar. And when we say children behind bar, we're not talking, this is not hyperbole either. This is real, that our society has been maybe able to justify putting children behind bars. Now we come up, this is not just United States of America, by the way, it's a problem across the world that governments are struggling to come up with a way to, for us, this generation or the previous generation, to raise children in a way that society doesn't have to struggle with the idea of putting children behind bars. But there is also one aspect of that I would like to bring forth, because the idea of children behind bars is not just because they're doing bad things. It's because there is a business. That's why we call it private prison. It's a business, and if we're talking about a business, then you can run your imagination wild that those organizations, those CEO, the people who make the most of the money, 7 figures to be exact, they see removing people freedom as a bargaining chip for them, for their business to continue to strive. And I really strongly suggest you follow this the discussion of this topic because we have so many aspects of this that impact our society, and because we simply do not have that information, that's not something you can tune into your favorite MSNBC or CNN or Fox and find that they addressing that, because most news organizations are more concerned about talking about what's going on in the world today, and it's a constant rolling of the tape of this news today, that news tomorrow. But the issues that actually impact our lives, we don't hear much about them, and that's why they continue to impact our lives. Now, this private prison industry, the CEO, the executives, they're making really great money, good money. In fact, it is a business, and they're not non-profit. They are for-profit businesses. So the idea is to bring as much, to make it as effective as possible in order to be as profitable as possible, so that the executive can make a lot of money, and the investors, oh yes, I forgot, there are investors, and we will address all that, and we will show you why our children are being placed behind bars. Now, the prison industry is a very profitable business in America. This is a recession-proof business. No matter what the situation is, when you hear there is bad economy, when you hear there is good economy, no matter what time, what period we're going through, the prison industry is a booming business. Never goes out of style. Now, I mentioned earlier that we as a society, we are very inclined to ignore a problem until we become directly impacted by the problem. That's unfortunate, but that's the way we seem to behave, and that's bad. As a side note, if you remember that there was a time that the system of justice was out in force destroying generation of blacks for drugs use. Generation of blacks are completely destroyed, arrested, thrown in jail. Some of them, when they come out, their lives over. And we as a society, we simply close our eyes because, it's just mostly blacks. We don't care because it doesn't impact us directly, right? Now, fast forward to today, there is a widespread movement across the nation to legalize drugs, to legalize the very substance that our society used to destroy generations of blacks. Think about that. We as a society, we silent when something doesn't impact us directly. We stay on the sideline and we watch our government destroying generation of lives, blacks in general, and we said absolutely nothing. In fact, a lot of people, whites in particular, they're responsible for, they control most everything: the justice system, the streets, the chief of police, the mayors, the governors, and they go along with the system and they punish generations of blacks for drugs use. I'm not referring to those drug dealers distributing drugs. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to drug users. Now, generations of blacks are destroyed by the system that was put in place. And today, what do we do when we find out that there are a lot of whites who are also drug users? Instead of destroying them, what we do, we say, oh, it's an epidemic. let's take care of that. Now, our government has put a system in place to help those who have that problem. Just an example. Now, back to the private prison industry. Same thing. A prison was the first private prison in 1952, and since then there has been, well, generations of blacks have been destroyed, being thrown in jail, sometimes for very stupid reasons. But we don't care, because guess what? Well, it's somebody else's problem, not ours. And it's been going on for decades, Now, in the 1980s, more specifically during the Reagan administration, the prison industry has skyrocketed. According to historical record, under the Reagan administration, the prison industry has grown to up to 1,800%. Yes, you listen, you hear correctly. 1,800%. Now think about that for a moment. You have a government whose job is to elevate people, but under the Reagan administration, the prison industry grew by up to 1,800%. Is what that means if you want to think about it in terms of money. If you were to have $1 sitting someplace and Reagan become president, and during his administration, your $1 would be worth $1,800. You don't have to put any more money, just that $1. So our government threw money at building prison. Oh, we didn't say anything because, hey, that's good for the country, because we're trying to stamp down crimes. We're trying to put away criminals. At least that's the justification we give to ourselves. That's what our government is doing. We support the government 100%. Except that it's not the reason that we have this problem. The construction, building of those prisons under the Reagan administration, if you care to read further, you will find out that the prison industry grew up to 1,800%, but the aid for education has been cut half, 50%. Now, who does that? Instead of elevating people, build more prison and cut on assistance for education. Now, that's also something we will come back to discuss, but to give you a sense as to when we put our partisan glasses and we dress as Democrats or dress as Republican, we also responsible for our society that's going downward. Because yes, the government is passing legislation that make those things become laws and making those decisions, but because we keep supporting it or we disconnected from it, then we also end up having to pay a price for it. Now, how is that related to private prison? Now, keep in mind that anything that's for profit, it is the job of the CEO, the president, whoever is at the top, to make certain that the business continue to make money and the business continue to be profitable. Now, remember, I mentioned to you at the very top that this business, the private prison, is recession proof. meaning when you don't have a job, the private prison is making profit. You have a job, the private prison is making profit. You have a job that doesn't really fill all your needs, it doesn't matter, the private prison is making a profit. And no matter which way you spin it, the private prison industry makes money. Now, last year, 2017, the two major corporations, Core Civic, that's one, under the ticker, I believe, CXW, and Geo Group, under the ticker GEO, they made a total of $3.5 billion revenue. $3.5 billion for the two largest corporation, private prison corporation in the nation. Under the Obama administration, they were losing ground to a point that everybody thought that we will start getting rid of private prison. Trump has been in office for 2 years. The business has grown by 140%. So if you see where I'm going with that, Republicans have completely abandoned the idea of elevating people. They can talk, of course they do a lot of talking, but when it comes to actually doing what is necessary to elevate people, that's not what they do. Under Reagan, they cut education assistance and increased funding for jail, for prison. Now, we've been going along with it, especially Republicans are very inclined to think those things are good. We don't want crime, we don't this, we don't that. But one aspect of the problem that is not even real is the fact that a lot of those numbers have to be there in order to convince the Republican constituent of the problem, because they help feed the private prison industry. That should be of concern. I'll show you why. Because once they start putting your children behind bars, then that's when you start realizing, oh, what the hell? Private prison is a business which makes money, which ought to be profitable. And on top of that, they have investors. And that's something we will delve into as well. And we will show you those banks you're investing your money in, those places you're putting your money in, they are the one feeding this business called the private prison industry. Now, the reason you should be concerned is because of the following. You see, anyone who has a business, anyone who manages businesses, knows that in order for that business to stay in existence, in order for that business to continue to make money, in order for that business to continue to make profit, in order for that business to satisfy the investors, that individual, the CEO, the president, the chairman, has to continuously look for ways to make money. Because if they don't, well, there will be no more business. How do they do that? How do they go about making more money? Well, remember, all businesses we have all organizations we have, they have lobbyists. Remember that? Lobbyists, people who actually spend their time in Washington and they have only one objective, is to lobby senator, congressmen, so that they can pass friendly legislation. They can have friendly policies for the businesses. Remember that? That's what lobbyists do. So when you talk about lobby, sometimes you see it in general, but you don't know how much that impact your lives or the lives of your neighbors or your community. Because the only thing you see is the grand lobbies. We know it's bad, but once you start understanding that lobbying is not just bad, but it impacts your lives, it impacts the lives of future generations, then maybe you may start doing something about that. Now, lobbying groups for the private prison industry have been lobbying for, well, friendly legislation policies that help the business. And what is the business? Well, the business is to have as many people as possible in jail. Do you see the problem? It is a business that relies completely, exclusively, solely on having as many people as possible in jail. How about that for a business? That's a business. There is nothing else that they do. They want as many people as possible in jail. How do you think that happened? Can you think of how that happened? There was war on drugs, which translates to only one thing: put the drug users behind bars, because that fills the prison. But the drug users were never the problem. It was the drug dealers, which we can barely get to. Because remember, if you cannot get to the head to stop the distribution of drug, then no matter what you do to the drug users, well, you take those drug users and put in jail, and the next time you get new drug users. The problem was never the drug users, was the drug dealers. But in the war on drugs, the people whose life had been destroyed were never the drug dealers. It's very rare that they caught a drug dealer. It's always the drug users. As such, they destroyed generations of lives. But we say, hey, it's a crime to use drugs, because that was the friendly policy, the friendly regulation, the friendly legislation. The reason is simple. They want more people in jail. And the reason you should be concerned is because, well, we start having this. Children's behind bar. Oh no, it's not for drug use. But it starts attracting attention to have children behind bars. What is this about? Putting children behind bars? What's going on? Don't you want to know? Why would we take our children? Why would a government take our children and put them behind bars? Remember, I just mentioned to you, under the Trump administration, the private industry has increased by 180%. 140%. Now CWX, which is called Civic, has gone up by 140% since Donald Trump won the presidency. And GEO Group has risen by 98%, almost 100% since that time as well. So the private prison industry is doing extremely well under Republicans. Remember Jeff Sessions? How much he was cracking down on illegal immigration? The behind the scenes story is the fact that there are a lot of legal immigrants here in the country, as well as a few citizens. In fact, we just the other day, a flight attendant was kept behind bar as illegal immigrant. She is a United States citizen. Now, what is going on exactly to have our children behind bar in jail? Why? Remember, money. The jail has to have people in order for those CEO to continue to make 7 figures, in order for those CEO to continue to tell their investors that their money is secure. They're going to have a lot of profits, so the investors can continue to reap the benefits. And our job here, addressing this very topic of children behind bar, is to show you who those people are, give you names, give you title, give you role, and also point to the banks that are financing the private prison industry. And the only way that those prison industries, those businesses, those private prison businesses can stay in existence is to make certain that their prison facilities are filled with prisoners. A 14-year-old kid by the name of Hillary Tronso was sent to jail because she made a fake MySpace page that was supposed to be funny about her vice principal. A 14-year-old girl was sent to jail because she made a fake MySpace page to mock the vice principal of her school. A 12-year-old boy was sent to jail because, well, he cursed someone, mothers of another child. You start getting the picture? The private prison business is destroying the young generation. And the people who are behind those businesses, they're not just doing it because they care about the safety of the Americans. They're doing it because they want to make money at any cost.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies presented to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
The race to 2020 has already started. There are currently at least 13 candidates, Democrats, vying for the nomination of the Democrat Party, and each one of them presenting to the nation or to their constituent why he or she should be the nominee for the party. Now, we must admit as a country that we do need a new president, because the one that we currently have does not work. He's not the president of the nation, and he has made that crystal clear. He relies on groups of people who simply are either too naive to understand that a president cannot be a president for a group, and a president who is incompetent, a president who is simply completely ignorant, and someone who just doesn't care about the rest of the country cannot possibly be someone you want to be your president. In 2016, unfortunately, the country made the mistake of electing probably the most despicable human being and placed in the Oval Office. And the world already made the verdict. The world has stayed away from the United States of America. The leadership that we used to provide to the rest of the world is no longer sought for. And yet, we still have millions of people who continue to support the actions of an individual who are clearly detrimental to the United States of America. So to introduce you to those who are vying for that office and hopefully will help restore decency in the Oval Office, let's start with no other than I want to be your number one. We'll come back to continue presenting you those candidates.
love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who makes love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. Tide is high, but I'm holding on. I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I'm holding on. I wanna be your number
I hope you enjoy the song, and it is the theme for the road to 2020. And without further ado, let's try to see if we can get to the road to 2020. We started yesterday to talk about this particular I cannot seem to find the road to 2020. That was Bernie Sanders. You may recall that we talked about Bernie Sanders, so we're gonna go and very quickly talk about other individuals. We talk about Beto O'Rourke. If you missed those, I would strongly suggest that you take a look at the previous video in which we talk about several different candidates before. We talk about Elizabeth Warren. We also talk about Jay Inslee. We talk about Uncle Joe. Joe Biden is the only individual we talked about who still has not declared his intention, although he gave a lot of hint. We talk about John Delaney, and I believe that's where we stop. He's probably a baby in politics. He only has 6 years in politics. And the next person is John Henkel. Is it Henkelberg? I think that's the way that his name is pronounced. I'm not really too sure, but let's see how they pronounce that name. If I can find it, that is. Is it John Hickenlooper? Wow. It's John Hickenlooper. He was John Hickenlooper actually is a geologist and a businessman. He was mayor of Denver mayor for 2 terms before he became governor in 2010. He is mostly he's not making a lot of noise in terms of agenda. He's been in politics for only 16 years, and of course most of the candidates who are not well known should not be discarded because they may have a lot of ideas to bring to the table. In fact, the more that we have individuals talking about different issues, the better it is. So what does John Hickenlooper brings to the table? Well, he's a guy who seems to want to enforce gun control laws in many states, and he wants to strengthen the economy, not just for rich people, but also to mostly for the middle class. And he is He's kind of a laid-back guy, as you can see even by the picture. He's kind of a laid-back guy, and he is contrary to Bernie Sanders, and I believe there are a couple of others in the race who seem to want to stay away from super PAC, from taking money from corporate donors. John Hickenlooper did not issue any kind of standing as to what he will do, but if I were to take a guess, I would say he probably will, because he's not a well-known guy, so he needs money in order to continue his bid for the presidency. One of the things that John wants to bring to the table, he wants to cut what he calls red tape for businesses, because he believes that if he cut red tapes and regulation, that will help business to grow. So that's really pretty much his big idea, or the big idea he wished to bring to the table. Now he's a guy, he's not very popular, but he's not unknown either. Castro was, I believe, Castro actually has a twin who looks just like him. In fact, there was a running joke that the only way to distinguish between those two is one has to grow a beard in order for people to be able to distinguish who is who. In any event, Castro grew in the neighborhood in San Antonio, and he, as I mentioned, he has a twin brother by the name of Joaquin. He did go to and had an Ivy League degree, and he's been in politics for 18 years. Now, the reason you may know Castro is because during the Obama presidency, he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the same job that today Ben Carson holds under the Trump administration. That's what he was. And I believe Castro was also at some point the mayor of San Antonio. If I'm not mistaken, he was the mayor of San Antonio. Now, contrary to John Hickenlooper that I just talked about, Castro already made a pledge that he's not going to take any money from super PAC, from political action committees. He's going to it seems that there is no way that we're able to verify whether Mr. Castro has been that way, because as I just mentioned earlier, he was the mayor of San Antonio. We do not have a way of finding out if he took money from political action committee, because the regulation only allows for those record to be kept for only 2 years, so we don't have any way of knowing if he did or not. Well, probably irrelevant, because he now pledged that he's not going to take any money. So that's also not a bad thing. Now, what is Mr. Castro's great idea? He is a strong proponent of free trade, and he believes that it's necessary for the growth of economy, because when you stifle trade, then there are a lot of businesses, a lot of cities, a lot of states that would suffer. So he would, I guess I'm assuming that he will feature this idea in his campaign. You may recall that in June of this year, that will be the time when the first debate for the Democrats, those who have already declared their candidacy, they will have the first debate, and at that time we will have a chance to see all of them, their ideas, and we'll have a chance only then. Remember, I mentioned to you, now all I'm doing at this point is kind of introduce the candidate to you. I haven't made any kind of determination as to which candidate I will christen as the nominee. Now, I say that is because I have the habit of picking the candidate who is going to be the nominee. I did that during the 2015, 2016, and of course I've been doing that. I did that also under Obama, first term, second term, and I did that under Bush. So I have had this habit of picking nominee for both parties, and so far my record has been pretty good. 100% I've been right about picking up who is going to be the nominee before we get to a point where anybody can see who that is. And that's really my forte, talking about the next nominee. For instance, just to give you a point of reference, for instance, I did declare Trump being the nominee of the Republican Party even before we went to South Carolina. You remember the primary in South Carolina, which was a major part of the whole deal because there were a lot of states that were involved. I was also able to get rid of all the other people that you see that drop left and right before they even made that decision. So you can read all about it you can read all about that on the peoplebranch.org, where I have many different articles that were written for the 2016, and you will find that way before anybody could even determine where the race was going, I was able to say who the nominee would be. So take a look. In any case, that is Juan Castro. Now the next person, pretty much Kamala Harris does not really need any introduction, but we're gonna give her one anyway. Now she has been in politics for 16 years, and she came to the national attention, if you recall, during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing. Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, interestingly enough, all three of them are bidding for the presidency of the United States. Kamala Harris did make a good impression on the Democrat, such that after the hearing, actually during the hearing for the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, people on the Democrat side were already asking, or were already hoping, were already suggesting for Kamala to bid for the presidency of the United States. Now, Kamala was at some point the Attorney General in California. I think she was a prosecutor in Oakland, California, before she became a district attorney in San Francisco. And then later on, I believe, she became the Attorney General for the state of California. Now, while she was attorney, I believe she ran for and became the U.S. For the Senate seat for in the state of California, and running for bidding for the presidency of the United States. She's still a senator. She still sits in I believe, in the Intelligence Committee, and of course, as a prosecutor, you can imagine how her style when she is questioning appointees, nominee rather, that comes to get confirmation in the Senate. Now, her idea is to have a tax cut for the middle class, and it is in contrast to the tax cut that's currently out there. And she also proposed that she would put an end to the Trump tax cut, which goes almost exclusively to large corporation and wealthy individual. In fact, that's really what the $1.5 trillion tax cut under Donald Trump is really a tax cut for corporation and for wealthy individuals. So Kamala Harris mentioned that if she becomes president, a big agenda on her item is to get rid of the Trump tax cut and to implement a working and middle class tax cut, and which some of it will be passed in the form of earned income credit, which is really going to be good for people who are really struggling with whatever the economy is. There are people who actually have to collect to have earned income credit, usually translate to people who are not making really a lot of money. So having a tax cut for the working and the middle class would be really a major boost, because the people that actually spend money are the people who actually need money to spend. Interestingly enough, for whatever reason, for whatever the logic is, Republican tax cut always benefit those who already have plenty of money. And what do you do if you already have plenty of money? You put it in your bank account. You invest it in mutual fund. You invest it in the stock market, but you don't spend that money in order to grow the economy. But for reasons that are still impossible to grasp, Republicans always provide a huge tax cut for people who already have plenty of money. We'll be right back.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
I do thank you to have spent the time with me. I hope those information were useful and would help push some agendas forward, would help make better decisions. However, if you have questions, criticism, comments, please do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have a topic you would like us to talk about, please let us know. We will research it. We will discuss it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And remember, tomorrow we will continue the conversation about human trafficking, but more specifically, we will focus on children behind bars. We will take the opportunity to bring you names of those who make a living putting people in jail, those who make a living figuring out ways to get more people in jail so that they can have a profitable business, and in the process destroy our generations of youngs, destroy future generations. Those people, they're not business people. They're scoundrels. They prey on the weak. They could have helped those who need help, but instead they look for ways to destroy lives. Hillary Transou, 14-year-old girl, was sent to jail because she made fun of her vice principal. John Bonnard, was 12-year-old boy, was sent to jail because, well, he cursed another mother at the school. Now, this is not to say this is good behavior, but what kind of society are we to be sending our children to jail because of bad behavior? But we know why it happened. It's because the private prison industry needs the jail's facility to be filled in order for the CEO, for the executive, for the investors to make money, to the detriment of our generations of kids, to the detriment of our future generation. If that is not a wake-up call for you to be involved and demand an end to the private prison business, sooner or later, you too may be impacted. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Hope to see you again tomorrow on the Fourth Branch program.
The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who makes love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. Tide is high, but I won't go. I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I